As I sit here this morning with Cinderella's castle behind me at the Magic Kingdom, I can't help but wonder of Walt Disney and the incredible visionary that man must have been. Well, we have a treat for you now because our next guest worked so very closely with Walt in the planning of Walt Disney World, General Joe Potter. Walt's right-hand man. That's what you've been called many times, Joe. It's a delight to meet you.
Eileen, I'm just so happy to be here. And isn't this wonderful sun?
Isn't it? Oh, yeah. I love it. I've had such a good time here. And I know you're extremely proud of Walt Disney World. Now, let's go back, because you were involved in the World's Fair in 1963, and that's how you really came to meet Walt, correct?
Yes, I was executive vice president for Mr. Bob Moses. And I think people in Boston must have known of Bob Moses long, long ago. And I worked with him there. And during the course of that fair, Walt put in 4 major exhibits. Without them, the fair wouldn't have amounted to
Can you tell us one of them?
One of them was the Small World that you see here.
Yes.
And the GE exhibit. And also Mr. Lincoln was there. Now, of course, he's in the Hall of Presidents.
That is such an incredible exhibit.
Yeah.
Then he hired you. He asked you to be a part of his organization, correct?
I got to know Walt, and one day I was approached to see whether I'd like to belong to the organization, and I couldn't have moved faster to say yes.
Oh, did you like him instantly? Did you see this visionary man?
I did. Mr. Moses was the same sort of person, and he and Walt were great friends. And somehow or other, I attuned to him. I'm basically a person that likes a strong, imaginative boss, and Walt surely was that.
He was, both strong and imaginative. He had the propensity of hiring top people, but he expected the best from them. What was it like working for him?
Well, the major thing about Walt is that you never could have a negative idea. Walt was imaginative, he was a creative, he knew what he wanted to do, and the rest of us were supposed to put together what he wanted in a meaningful way. And he was critical all during the design phase. He was critical until it came out exactly and as perfectly as this place shows.
Did he just believe inside that no matter what he dreamed, it could be possible?
Well, he never had a doubt. He never had a doubt.
Except there were those that doubted, Joe, because when Disneyland opened, everyone said it would fail.
Because they didn't know Walt.
Is that the reason?
They didn't know Walt, and he was determined even after Roy said the thing probably wasn't any good. He just moved off into a separate building and started to design Disneyland, and it's the great success that led to this being here.
Now, you worked with him in the creation of Walt Disney World. He had that dream shortly after Disneyland opened, didn't he, Joe?
Well, he was approached by other countries, other states, to put in a Disneyland in their places, but he felt that when the time came and when he was ready and when we were financially capable, he would do it himself. He would do it so that we had a buffer around us, just like we have here. Whereas in Disneyland in California, we don't have a buffer. And all the little shops and things surround us so that the little jewel isn't in a proper ring. Here it's in a proper ring.
Well, here it's like a city. I mean,
Yes.
It's incredible. Let's take a look at footage that we have of Walt describing his dream of Walt Disney World.
Welcome to a little bit of Florida here in California. This is where the early planning is taking place for our so-called Disney World project. Now, the purpose of this film is to bring you up to date about some of the plans for Disney World. But before I go into any of the details, I want to say just a word about the site of our Florida project. As you can see on this map, we have a perfect location in Florida, almost in the very center of the state. In fact, we selected this site because it's so easy for tourists and Florida residents to get here by automobile. Now, in larger scale on this map, our Florida land is located partly in Orange County and Osceola County, between the cities of Orlando and Kissimmee. And the important thing is that the Disney World is located just a few miles from the crossing point of Interstate 4 and Sunshine State Parkway, Florida's major highways carrying motors east and west and north and south to the center of the state. The sketches and plans you will see today are simply a starting point, our first overall thinking about Disney World. Everything in this room may change time and time again as we move ahead.
You know, Eileen, when Walt made this tape the day before he went in the hospital, and all of us were standing around there worried that he might say Kissimmee instead of Kissimmee.
Because he was a sick man.
No, he wasn't. You saw the film. He wasn't sick.
He wasn't sick then,
No,
but shortly after that we lost him.
Yeah.
It's amazing to look at that piece of tape and see the size of Kissimmee in relation to Orlando, and now Orlando has grown so big.
Well, one day it'll probably be as big as Atlanta, but that's a little while in the future.
Well, with the new Epcot Center and all of the dreaming and that's coming to fruition, you can certainly believe that.
And our new airport that
Your
you
new airport?
Bostonians are coming to.
Oh, it's beautiful. I wonder, though, Joe, when the dream began, you needed a lot of land. How in the world did the corporation acquire 27,000 acres of land?
Well, Walt knew that he wanted to come to Florida. So we had a very brilliant young lawyer who was also a real estate genius. And Walt wanted 10,000 acres. And Bob Foster finally came up with about 8 or 9 places where there were 10,000 acres all in one piece. This place was decided upon for various reasons. And as time passed, Bob would come to Walt and say, I have found 5,000 other contiguous acres. And Walt said, buy it. And he'd come in and say, I have 4,000 other acres. And Walt would say, buy it. And finally, I think Roy stopped him, or else we might have bought the whole state of Florida.
Roy is Walt's brother, correct?
Was Walt's brother.
Was
yes.
Walt's brother. Did those two get along?
Oh, absolutely. They're entirely different. Roy was a financial genius, one of the greatest I've ever bumped into. And Walt would come up with these ideas to do something, films, theme parks, or what have you, and he'd design it, and he'd tell Roy to go get the money to build it. It was that simple.
There's something poignant in the fact that Walt never saw Walt Disney World and is not around now to see Epcot. What do you think he would have thought of this place?
I think he would have been more proud than I am. But he also would have said probably, why didn't you do this instead of that? You know, he never accepted the fact that change couldn't be done. And
Just
I
constantly.
think the greatest thing in a rather full life has been my relationship with the Disney family. And we call everybody the family.
Oh, I know you do, and it feels like a family here. Everyone is happy.
Doesn't it really, Eileen?
Yeah, now we've had a chance to get to meet the cast members, and I have to tell you, it's really something special. Well, you say that the proudest moment of your life was the day that Walt Disney World opened 10 years ago last month.
Yes, ma'am. I just think it was like, gave me more thrill than anything because I had something to do with it. It was like producing your own child.
Well, I will never forget the day that it was announced that Walt had died. I shed a tear, and I'm sure that many, many people across the world did the same thing.
It was a disaster.
But now we smile because of him.
Isn't it great that he built up the team that was able to put his dreams into fruition?
Yes.
And will carry this company on for, the next 100 years maybe?
We hope so. Thank you, General Joe Potter. A delight to
Eileen,
meet
thank you.
you.